a good Thursday evening, everybody. Chris McDonald with you. We're grateful to have you. We've got a very special show tonight, a pre-record show. We were supposed to be on by 8, but I figured I'm going to come on at 9. That's what you get for being the boss. You can come on when you want to, right? We're always usually on 8 or 9 o'clock. Now, I'm not sure what we're going to do after this, if we're going to have a late show tonight or not. I guess it depends on how I feel. I've got like 30 videos we've been sort of holding back to show you and talk about. And we do have some news stories to cover. A couple of things. The Longshoremen Union strike is over. It seems that they got their act together. So that's some good news tonight. So all this rushing to the grocery store and everybody freaking out. And again, I'm not making light of that. I think it was a legitimate concern. James Ard Monday night give us a heads up about it. That it could be, coming, and it did come, but they got it worked out. Let me just say this before I get to my guest tonight. Every problem in America gets worked out a month before the election. Trust me. Gas prices are going down. The union strike is now miraculously solved. And you North Carolinian folks should be kissing the ground that Kamala Harris is walking on, because Kamala is going to give everybody $750 that are a victim. Wow. That's so much to be grateful for, Kamala. Thank you so much. After you and Joe gave $175 billion with a B to the Ukraine, but you can't give the hurricane victims of North Carolina $750. But the media tonight is calling her the savior. I mean, even Liz Cheney, for God's sakes, out there campaigning and proclaiming all this wonderful stuff that she's doing. And our side, of course, is worried about whether Trump's praying to an angel tonight or not, or worrying about what Melania's comments were this morning about abortion. We're not electing Melania Trump as president. We're electing Donald Trump as president. I don't agree with Melania Trump's view on abortion, but I'm not electing her as the president. But that's what our side's doing. That's how stupid our side gets. And so, anyway, I may deal with that later tonight. But I don't want to ruin the debut of the one and only John Macari with us tonight. And our dear friend Jen Harrison, we had him on a panel yesterday. This interview was yesterday. I have been wanting to talk about this all week, but we've had breaking news with Israel, and we really haven't been able to get to it. But we're going to discuss it tonight, because there's a story the media is being very, very hush-hush about. And it is the exploding time bomb in the Big Apple of New York City. And as so New York goes, the country goes, folks. And this corruption in New York City is very ugly, and it is going to have ramifications nationally, I think. But we'll see how this plays out. But John and Jen are covering this. John's got the Best Unfiltered podcast show. They're both down in Florida tonight, but they just left New York. They are New Yorkers. So I know Karen Berry and Outdoor, and I think Jenny is from New York. Jennifer Milano, I think, is from up there. Y'all going to love these guys, because they do talk like Yankees. And I love it. I really enjoy talking to both of them. It's good to have Jen back on with us. She's going to be back on with us more this year. She's been in the transitional time, but we're so grateful to have a dear friend back with us tonight. This is a pre-recorded interview, so please do me a favor. Just affirmations and listen. We'll take your questions at the end. This is about a 40-minute interview. It ain't going to be long. And then we'll see where we go from there. We may just stay on for a little bit, maybe take a break and come back. If I don't, this will be it, but we'll talk with you a little bit at the end, okay? So, without further ado, here is the one and only, our new guest, John Macari, and our dear friend Jennifer Harrison tonight, about the corruption in the Big Apple. And it's a big, big deal, what's going on, because I think Eric Adams is just the beginning. And we'll let you listen and figure that out. Have a good evening. We'll be right back after this interview, and hope you enjoy the show. Be blessed. And a good evening, everybody. Chris McDonald with you on a very special recorded interview on our McFiles network tonight. We're so grateful. We're always grateful to have new guests, but we're also grateful to have All guests hadn't been with us in a while, and we've got Jennifer Harrison back with the Victims' Rights Reform Council and John Macari. It's so good to have John. John is a retired New York Police Department lieutenant. He's also founder and the co-host of the Finest Unfiltered podcast. And John, it is such a pleasure. We were talking before the show, and it's just a pleasure to have you today, man. Jennifer, good to see you back here. And we're going to let y'all both chime in. The reason I brought you guys on today, I want to talk about what's going on in New York. A lot of people, it's been sort of under the radar because of the Israel thing and the debates and everything. But I really believe that this thing that's going on with Eric Adams is huge because it's one of the biggest cities in our nation. This corruption that is up there, I think, is going to probably touch a lot more than just people in New York, perhaps. But John, you've been right sort of following this on your podcast, and I want you to speak to it a little bit about Eric. And Jennifer, I'll let you chime in. I'll just ask you the $1 million question. He's been indicted, and you tend to believe that what the headlines are saying in New York is not really telling us the whole story about what's really going on in that mayor's office. It sounds like a mafia outfit to me, and the corruption beyond words. What say you, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, Eric Adams, the Eric Adams administration is very reminiscent of the Gambino crime family. I believe that there's going to be subsequent indictments against Eric Adams, and not only Eric Adams, his entire administration. You've seen 5 of his top several mayor advisors step down. He's surrounded in allegations of corruption. I mean, he has several investigations under him. He was indicted for bribery charges, taking money from foreign countries. So that's what he officially is indicted on. But I believe you're going to start to see things tie in. We just had a big scandal break where we had the seated police commissioner step down.
All
He's
that today.
under federal investigation. His home was raided, his electronics were taken, as long as several other top officials in the NYPD. And what they're being accused of is doing a shakedown extortion racket from the top of the police department. So when this all plays out, and there's several other investigations, but I don't want to chew you guys' ear off, but when this all plays out, this will be the biggest corruption scandal probably in U.S. history.
Yeah. Jen, what's your take? You're a former New Yorker, and John, you both have lived up there. Y'all are no longer there. Y'all are down south. But what's your take on this? Because it's a troubling thing. I mean, that you have the biggest mayor in New York City do this. And let me just say this. This is the hypocrisy. I will say this about the media. The hypocrisy of the media is that, look, Rudy Giuliani wasn't perfect, but he was a good mayor. He saw New York through one of his toughest nightmares ever. And they have crucified that man and said, this man has become broke after having the legal stuff thrown at him that they've thrown him simply because he supported President Trump. It's hideous. And this bastard gets indicted. And I'll be honest with you, that's one of the reasons I'm having y'all on tonight, because I think that it's important that the world know what's going on, because the media is not going to report what John just told us, correct?
Right. And sadly, the media is complicit in what's happening right now, because everybody and anybody who was paying attention and knew Eric Adams knew that this was going to happen if he was elected. They knew that he was corrupt. People called it out on a daily basis. Unfortunately, the media never covered it, and the voters never got to hear about it. And now they're witnessing it firsthand, and they're thrown into complete chaos. And New Yorkers deserve a lot better than what they're being dealt right now. You mentioned the hypocrisy of all of this. One of the biggest issues right now that John discusses as well is one of our friends, Sal Greco, was fired from the NYPD for consorting with criminals, aka Roger Stone. Meanwhile, they're all criminals, they're all crooks, they all hang out with crooks, and unfortunately, New York City and New York State is run by a corrupt criminal enterprise. And, I just hope that voters wake up sooner rather than later and vote these crooks out of office. It's also astounding to hear that former disgraced Governor Cuomo is a front runner to replace Eric Adams. So, you just replace one corrupt politician with another one. And I mean, is this the best that New York has to offer? If so, then I'm glad that I left.
Well, that is that, it is comical. I hate to laugh about it, but when you hear the what is it, the revolving chair that you go from Adams to Cuomo. You had De Blasio, the communist, Adams, the corrupt mafia guy. Now you're going back to Cuomo, that basically put New York in the straits and COVID and killed all the people in the nursing homes. I mean, it does make you wonder, John. I'm going to let you speak to this. You lived it there. What is it in the public there in New York? Are the elections that tainted to where the people is it that liberal there, or is it, because I've been told by numerous people that live in New York that you get outside of that city, New York's a red state. I mean, we were joking about it before the show that you're in that red state of New York, and you're not, but you're not now. But I've heard that New York is actually conservative out in the country, and I've met people out in the country, and they've got conservative values.
So I'm just going to dispel the rumors right now. New York is a red state. I'm from New York City. I'm from Southern Brooklyn, Staten Island, and that's solid red. So when people meet me, I meet Southerners. They're like, "Oh my God, you're conservative?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, everybody I know voted for Trump in the last election. None of us like Bill de Blasio. The problem in the city is we are heavily outweighed with voters. We're not heavily outweighed with support. There's voter apathy amongst voters, and they're low information. They don't partake in the political process. They don't know who their elected officials are. They don't know the issues. They don't understand them. And the part of the problem is the media. The media feeds them low information sound bites, and this is what these people understand. And the media itself in New York, I don't care what channel you want to tell me, Fox News, Newsmax, whatever it is, there is a leftist spin to all of it, and they're feeding people garbage, and they're not honed in on the issues. Like Jennifer said, I mean, if you listen to the people that have been paying attention, none of this is a shock. Absolutely none of this is a shock under the Adams administration. And just because you brought up Rudy Giuliani predicted the state of New York after Eric Adams' first debate on Rita Cosby's show, 77 WABC. He predicted exactly everything that would be the Adams administration, including the sanctuary city where he welcomed the entire world and gave them everything.
Without a doubt. Jen, you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, and it's not, sadly, it's not even just the media that's complicit in this. It's so-called community leaders who claim and pretend to care about their community and the members of their congregations. And meanwhile, they're all bought and paid for by the Democrat machine. They block Republicans or any opposition from coming in and speaking to their members. So that's another way that they block information. And it's all about funding. At the end of the day, these people are just bought and paid for, and it's really sad because people are really suffering on a tremendous level right now. Their kids are being killed. They can't afford food. Kids are joining gangs. There's drill rapping. Kids are shooting each other in the street. It's just really horrible to see how downhill it has gone.
John, I asked you something before the show. I want to address it with y'all a little bit because this is always. It's always been something that's been unclear to me why this happens. And you mentioned the left. This is not the left. This is true corruption coming from Eric Adams' office. Cuomo was the same thing. Is there hope that these people in these nursing homes that basically were sent to their death by the Cuomo governorship of New York, that they're going to find justice with this? And are the New York City people that desperate for leadership they would even think about putting him back in charge after all this? And Jen, I'll let you chime in on this because, I've got a dear friend and she lost her mother, wasn't even able to attend her mother's funeral because of Cuomo's policies. And that story is not isolated. I've talked to other people up there that's had it. It's going on through the country. But New York was ground zero for this stuff. Not to use a bad word with 9/11, but it really was the center. What Cuomo was doing was used in several other governorships around this country to basically condemn people to their death during COVID.
Again, unfortunately, New York is a low information state. There's apathetic voters. They're in a crisis of leadership now. Cuomo plays on his name recognition. The voting bloc in New York is mainly elderly people. And you could tell me Republican, conservative, liberal, leftist, they all love Cuomo. The lawsuit against him for the nursing homes just got thrown out in New York. Unfortunately, I don't see anything coming out of it. And, predicted over a year ago that Cuomo smelled blood in the water and he would be the next mayor of New York City.
Wow.
And it's just unfortunate. We're in a crisis of leadership. The GOP in New York is non-existent. They don't recruit. They have no bench. They have no dugout. And the people that are playing the game are, in my opinion, progressive light. They're definitely not conservative, and they're not even Republicans.
Good point. Jim?
Yeah, so I don't know if you remember, but 2 of my family members died 2 days apart in a nursing home during COVID. My Aunt Jo and my step-grandmother, Teresa, and they were Long Island's Homefront sisters. Aunt Jo was Long Island's Josie the Riveter. She put the bolts in the planes that helped win World War II. They were national treasures. And, I've never given up fighting for justice. Thank God we have Janice Dean and Peter Arbini that are filing lawsuits, and Voices for Seniors that are out there every day fighting for justice. And thank God for the House Select Committee that keeps holding hearings to hold these people to account and make sure that this never happens again. So I don't think that he'll ever face justice for this. There are people that still don't believe that this even happened, unfortunately. I mean, even though when it's right in front of their faces, he was caught lying before Congress, which is a crime, even though he wasn't under oath. So, if he doesn't have anything to hide, then why is he lying to Congress? And, unfortunately, voters in New York City have extremely short memories. I do not. Governor Cuomo destroyed my life in so many different ways. He's not a moderate in any way, shape, or form. Governor Cuomo is all about Governor Cuomo. And, let me remind people of all the policies that destroyed New York, that New York City is facing right now. He implemented. He made New York a sanctuary state. He actually, part of the law that made New York a sanctuary state also greenlit illegals to get driver's licenses and automatically be registered to vote. That part had to be taken out after a tremendous amount of pressure, but it was in there to begin with. He's the one that pushed bail reform down our throats. The casualty list from that is well over 400 people dead. He's the one that refused to sign a budget without bail reform. He didn't just green light it. He refused to sign a budget without bail reform. That's all on him. He forced it down our throats in a line item in the budget without legislative debate, without the legislative process, so that stakeholders, victims advocates like myself, cops like John, people that really should have been listened to, never even had a voice in the process. He also is the one that implemented the law making recreational marijuana legal with the loopholes that allowed for all of the illegal smoke shops that people are complaining about in the city. Now, all of a sudden, he's, the unsung hero of that. But me and blaming loopholes, well, they're his loopholes. So, his parole board is the one that released a record number of cop killers and other monsters. His parole board is still Kathy Hochul's parole board, but he's the one that appointed all of these people. The list goes on and on. The tyrannical mandates really is what caused a mass exodus of people to leave New York City, and it's basically on the brink of destruction. Oh, he also closed psychiatric facilities, which is what led to the homelessness and mental health crisis that we're seeing. All of these EDPs, we call them emotionally disturbed people wandering the streets of New York City, is because they don't have beds anymore because Governor Cuomo closed the facility. So, I mean, it just goes on and on. How he could be the hero of all the crises that he created, it's baffling.
It's a sad legacy, but and I think John's on to something. John, you mentioned something a while ago about you don't want to give us an earful. I'd like to get you a chance to give us an earful, because I'd like to know a little bit more, because tell us a little bit more about Adams, and we're gonna sort of shift to Hochul in a minute and this Chinese situation, but tell us a little bit more of what you do know about Eric Adams, because you said that what we're reading in the newspapers is pancakes compared to what's really going on. And look, feel free to say what you got to say about it, because I think that the world needs to know, the nation needs to know, because look, like it or not, New York tends to set the tone for the country. And if this corruption is not dealt with, and John, I respect your service as a former law enforcement. I respect folks like you deeply. You never will understand. People, I think, never appreciate police officers like they should. And we have got a lawless nation on our hands right now. We got lawless cities, we've got lawless towns, we've got lawless counties, we've got lawless states. And Jennifer alluded to this. That's why people are dying. That's why people are getting killed and murdered and raped, because corruption always starts at the top. The rank and file are just out there doing their job. But a lot of times they can't do their job because of the bureaucrats that sit in New York City and in the city halls and the state houses. But that's why I think this is important, because it's time we do a house cleaning up top. And maybe this is a start of a house cleaning that's going to give other states courage and other cities courage to take a look at these freaking corrupt tyrant mayors and get them out of office. Roll on.
All right, so like I said, he was indicted for bribery charges, taking gifts valued in over $100,000 from Turkey, took in over $10 million in illegal campaign donations, right? Everyone in New York is like, oh, you know, it's just courtesies. It's not a big deal that he's being bribed. I see it the exact other way. What they fail to mention in the media is that we just had the seated police commissioner, Edward Caban, resign. His home was raided. That is no small act for a law enforcement officer to investigate a seated police commissioner and the entire upper echelon of the NYPD, all of the top dogs in the NYPD. And then it's no small act to go before a judge and get a search warrant to search their home and remove electronics from their homes, which happened. Why did that happen? Well, it's being alleged that the police commissioner, who had a twin brother, who did have a taxpayer-funded NYPD security detail, was operating a bribery extortion business, or what they were calling a nightlife consulting business. And what they were going around and they were doing is they were going to businesses, and we have a business owner in Coney Island in the 60th precinct saying that he reached out to an office that was created by New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Eric Adams said that he wanted to help businesses, so he created the Office of the Nightlife. Prior to the Office of the Nightlife, we used to have what's called a multi-agency response in New York City, where we would go around to clubs, restaurants, and bars with Department of Health, the fire department, the state liquor authority, things of that nature, and ensure that businesses were operating up to snuff. We would do yearly inspections, as well as when we had shootings, stabbings, numerous community complaints. We would do that. Eric Adams said, we don't want to do that any longer. We want to help cure businesses. So we're going to get rid of this multi-agency response, something that I spoke out about, and I said this is going to lead to corruption the minute it happened. And he created the Office of the Nightlife. So business owner in Coney Island's having problems getting summonses. So he calls the Office of the Nightlife. He speaks to a man named Ray Martin. Ray Martin, who's a longtime confidant of New York City Mayor Eric Adams and worked with him when he was a borough president and all this, he reaches out to him for help. He says, I'm having problems. I just want to get my business up to snuff. What do I need to do? Could somebody come by and show me what I'm doing wrong? Ray Martin says to him, there's absolutely, in an official capacity, there's nothing that I could do for you. You need to call this guy. And he gives him the police commissioner's twin brother's phone number. He could help you. I can't help you. So he's calling in an official capacity this Office of the Nightlife of the mayor. When he calls now the police commissioner's twin brother, the police commissioner's twin brother says, I'll take care of everything for you. Just pay me $2,500. And he says, I'm absolutely not doing that. I'm absolutely not going to do that. That sounds like extortion. Hung up the phone. And the minute that happened, the enforcement really came down very hard on this man's business, and his business was shuttered. At the same time this is going on, Eric Adams has appointed two deputy mayors, one who has stepped down now, which is Timothy Pearson, and another one who's still in power named Phil Banks. Phil Banks was appointed. He was an unindicted co-conspirator in a previous corruption case in the NYPD. He was the NYPD's first deputy commissioner. When he was named that, he ran out, and a federal corruption probe came down in the Bill de Blasio administration. So when Eric Adams appointed him, everybody's eyebrow raised and said, you're appointing this guy? So what's being alleged, and it's not even being alleged because it actually happened, is they are funneling contracts to businesses that not only they started, but business Banks, his brother, Timothy, it's bid rigging and all of this. They're funneling hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts to a business that Phil Banks owned. Timothy Pearson's been on record in a lawsuit. He has 4 sexual assault allegation lawsuits against him, and in all of those lawsuits, the parties allege that Timothy Pearson said Everybody's eating. I got to get my crumbs too, meaning talking about the contracts, the migrant contracts. It's also said that they were in charge of NYPD promotions and transfers and that they were selling those. At the same time that's going on, we have the New York City sheriff, who's a mayoral appointed sheriff. He acts more in a civil manner in New York City than as a sheriff traditionally does throughout the country. NYPD takes part in the law enforcement and is the #1 law enforcement in New York City. The sheriff office assists in forfeiture closings, removals of property, things of that nature, shuttering businesses. So the New York City sheriff had just went on record in front of New York City Council and stated he doesn't believe they've ever forfeited any money, meaning they've never taken businesses from any money. Have taken money from any businesses that they shuttered during any type of raids, whether it be for illegal marijuana or the business wasn't up to snuff in nightlife. He says, we don't believe that we've ever done that. Now, there's videotape of that actually happening where the sheriff's office is removing money. We have numerous businesses throughout New York City saying, no, he took my money and I never got a voucher for it. I never got a receipt for it. I never got a receipt for any of the property that he's taken. So that is a completely separate allegation. He's saying he has no idea where the money is. An investigation ensues looking to what he's talking about, because at the same time in that city council hearing, he didn't know how many arrests they made. He didn't know how many officers were assigned to him. He didn't even know where the money went. And his records for 2023 showed that he actually put in the bank $200 and something thousand in forfeited money, meaning he actually did seize money from businesses. And overall, they have over $800,000 in that account. So it was really alarming. And an investigation ensued. And immediately after that investigation, the sheriff miraculously just finds between $100,000 and $150,000 in his office. And he self-reports on himself. He calls the Department of Investigation in New York City, and he self-reports that. And, and again, I could chew your ear off probably till tonight. There's so much going on with this administration. It's documented. It's in the news. But what the news is reporting and honing in on,
Right.
They're staying on this bribery charge because it's the indictment, but all of this has been reported and circulating.
It's Mafia, John. It sounds like you mentioned the Gambino family. The Gambino family's envious of this. Crap, they probably wish they'd get in on a piece of this action at this point. Jen, let me ask you a question. Thank you, John. That's good. And I want you to chime in on this next question, too. The lawlessness in the nation that we see right now. John, and Jen, I'll let you both chime in. Jen, I'll start with you. I mentioned the bureaucracy of the states and the cities. John, you're in the field. You were in the field for years. Where have we gone wrong with this lawlessness? Because this illegal situation, we've had a story this morning. We just had a horrible hurricane come through the South. I live in Tennessee. I mean, we got just 20 minutes this way of me east. We got cities underwater still. 7 illegal immigrants, 7 illegal aliens have been charged this morning with looting. I mean, this is how sick these people have gotten. They're looting the cities that are underwater, literally going to these businesses trying to get stuff out. And we don't know how they got here. The government here, we're a pretty red state down here, but we tend to have little lapses in judgment when it comes to this illegal stuff. And I'm just going to ask you both point blank, can we keep sustaining this illegality, lawlessness in this country? I don't see how we sustain a nation on the basis of lawlessness. Jen, I'm going to let you chime in on that first. John, I'll let you finish what she says. Go ahead, Jen.
Well, that's the thing with all of this corruption, right? Is that, people elect representatives thinking that they genuinely want to be public servants and represent their constituency and make decisions based on the best interests of the people that they represent. But we're finding out little by little, or, big story by big story with that Eric Adams indictment, that that's not necessarily the case, and that really their bigger interest and maybe their only interest is to line their own pockets. So we have to wonder why all these decisions for social justice reforms that are getting people killed, bail reform, progressive prosecutors, everything that kitchen table topics now, is it being implemented because these people genuinely think, the elected representatives genuinely think that it's the right thing to do, or is somebody lining their pockets and is corruption involved? And, you know, more and more we have to realize that there are nefarious activities going on and nefarious purposes behind all of this stuff that's being implemented. And now, you know, with all of these illegals coming in, we've seen firsthand that in New York City, especially, that it's unsustainable. I was driven out of my home in Suffolk County, Long Island, which is, you know, 60 miles out from New York City. It's suburbia. You know, I was driven out of my home because illegals are driving up the rent prices there and the home prices there. You know, there's 8 people living in a house, 3 people per room. They're paying $800 to $1,300 a month per room, but they're splitting that amongst 3 or 4 people. Families are coming and consolidating all of their savings or all of the money that they earn, and, you know, grandma, the mom, the dad, the uncle, they're all buying houses, and they can afford astronomical prices that working 2-income families cannot afford. So, you know, to keep my son in his school district, it would have been $3,400 to $3,700 a month rent as a single mother. There's no way that anybody, you know, even 2-income families can't really sustain that. And I would see that daily on our community news on social media pages, that, you know, 2-income families with 2 or 3 children were being driven from their homes, and they were becoming homeless, and in sheer panic, what can we do? What can we do? So, you know, I came to Florida, but not everybody has that option. And now, Chris, you mentioned the hurricane. We're seeing firsthand that FEMA money has been going to sustain illegals. So, I mean, you know, hardworking, tax-paying American citizens who are in a crisis situation, you know, lost everything. We don't have the money to support. Their money can't be redirected back to them in this situation, because it's going to pay for $500 a night hotel rooms and $600 a month for people that have no desire to assimilate into our country whatsoever.
John, chime in on that, because, you know, you were in the field, buddy. You saw this firsthand, and this lawlessness as a former police officer. It's got to it frustrates me, man. I'm a pretty we Southerners, we just look at things with common sense, but it frustrates the hell out of me to see our country delve into this lawlessness. And Jen's idea about this illegals is right on. She's square on about this, because it does make people mad. It makes me mad, and it infuriates me that, again, this Biden-Harris administration is making this about race. They even are giving FEMA questions to people and not asking them, do you need money? The question is, what's your ethnicity? And based on your ethnicity, they're basically giving a percentage of those funds to people. I don't care what your ethnicity is. If your city's underwater and your house is underwater, you need money. I don't care if you're red or blue, black, green, yellow, or whatever. What say you, bud?
Listen, this is absolutely unsustainable. It's unsustainable on every front. When we look at it from crime, it's unsustainable. When we look at it economically, it's unsustainable. When we look at housing, it's unsustainable. When we look at our food supplies, it's unsustainable. When we look at our healthcare system, it's unsustainable. When we look at our schools, it's unsustainable. We are going to collapse our country. Every American should really take hold and look at their own home, look around their home and say, could I just keep letting all of these people come in my home? I'm not getting any more funds. As a matter of fact, I'm getting everything. The price of goods are going up. The price of my healthcare is going up. The price of my living is going up. The services that I'm being allotted are going down. My healthcare is suffering. My police response is suffering. Anything of the schools is suffering. Everything around me is suffering, but I'm being told I should let everyone in the front door of my house. And it's fine. We'll just let people keep coming in here, because that's the microcosm of what's happening in this country. That's a completely unsustainable plan. It's failing on its face already. Our elected officials need to have their feet held to the fire. The problem we're seeing is, again, it's low information around the country. The media is not reporting on the facts. I have a big problem with the corporate media. They just do not hone in on the issues. They're not telling us the truth. You know, it's being reported that all this is happening to Eric Adams because he spoke out against the Biden administration. Eric Adams calls himself the Biden of Brooklyn. He's time and time again called for open borders in New York City. He incentivizes the entire world to come to New York City. He purposely misinterprets New York State's right to shelter law, which only applies to New York State residents. He interprets it, misinterprets it to apply to the entire world. And you know, it's at the point, it's like everyone's like, oh yeah, it's because he spoke out. I'm like, he spoke out against Governor Abbott, and he was asking for more federal funds. He never spoke out against the Biden administration. He endorsed Joe Biden. 2 days later, he endorsed Kamala Harris when that switched. He's never missed a beat. He moves in complete lockstep with him. And I just can't buy, that right before a presidential election, the Democrats are going to eat their own in a big city.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Huge scandal come out. It's just not believable for me. The facts just don't add up for me for that.
Mike,
Yeah,
Chris,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
To John's point, you know, if Eric Adams really wanted to stand up to the Biden administration or stand up for New Yorkers, which we begged him to do time and time again, and be the leader that New Yorkers needed him to be in that moment, he has attorneys at his beck and call, and he could have fought against the right to shelter. He could have fought the Biden administration like Governor Abbott has, like Ron DeSantis has, like the real leaders that actually stood up for the people that they represented. He didn't do anything. Like John said, you know, having a press conference and calling Governor Abbott a racist and saying that we need more money is not standing up to Joe Biden.
No, that's true. I'll agree with that. We've got about 10, 15 minutes here. Listen, I want to ask John, I want to ask you a question, and I'm going to ask you both something about Hochul. John, in your line, when you were a police officer in New York City, where do you think this thing went off the rails there? Because, you know, again, I respect what the New Yorkers have went through. I was actually in New England the day of 9/11 and drove through New York coming home, and it was the most solemn. I'll never forget it. If the Lord gives me 40 more years on this earth and I'm 100 years old in a wheelchair talking to my grandkids, I'll remember 9/11, 2001, and I'll remember the spirit of the city. I'll remember what Rudy Giuliani did for the city. I'll remember the police officers, the first responders, the firemen, all those lost their life trying to save life. There was a time that there was pride, you know, of what the police were doing in New York, and crime. Look, say what you want to about Giuliani. I respect Giuliani. He made it tough for these criminal enterprises to operate. Where did it go wrong? And how has New York become the cesspool of crime that it has become? And it's you can't even walk into Central Park without getting knifed, mugged, or worse. And it's horrible. It's like two different cities. It's like a tale of two cities, as Charles Dickens wrote in his famous novel. There was a city then, and now this city now it's a nightmare up there. Where did it go wrong, in your opinion?
Law enforcement is the most misunderstood profession, I think, in the entire nation. While it's the most misunderstood, it's also the most scrutinized. Everybody weighs in on it. Doctors weigh in on it. Teachers weigh in on it. Media weighs in on it. Everyone weighs in on it. And the experts in law enforcement, the law enforcement officials, unfortunately, the people that are at the top are grifters. You know, they say what they're told to say. They align themselves to a political narrative. And the truth about the profession never comes out. So, you know, I grew up in New York City. It was a city of crime. It was controlled. My neighborhood was safe, but it was controlled by the mafia. It wasn't because of the police. It wasn't because of our elected officials. All the elected officials were corrupt. The police force was corrupt. And the gangsters in my neighborhood controlled everything in my neighborhood, including who's going to get a job and everything else, and who's getting government contracts and all this. Rudy Giuliani came in. He cleaned all that up. He instituted the broken windows theory of policing, where it was a hands-on style of policing, where we took care of the minor crimes, and then and under that theory, if you take care of the minor crimes, the bigger ones will stop. And it worked. It worked wonders. I went from growing up in a city of crime to walking around New York City at 3 o'clock in the morning, but facing zero adversity. Businesses came in, jobs flourished. Tourism was flourishing. New York City truly was the safest city in America. In my opinion, it was the best scenario in America. And Bloomberg, under 3 terms of Bloomberg, he prospered by just keeping that insane policing strategy, that same public safety strategy that Rudy Giuliani did. And then the demonization of policing started, and everyone put their hand in. Oh, we need to do this. That doesn't sound right. That doesn't look good. And, you know, I always say it. I get beat up a lot for it. Police work is not a pretty thing.
It's not.
It doesn't look pretty on camera, but it's necessary.
Absolutely, but no, I'm with you, John, and I couldn't agree more with that. Jen, you want to chime in on that? Because I think that what you said is true, because the scrutiny is always on the police officers. Look, the people are putting their families and their life on the line. And I'll say this in publicly, look, a police officer today, when he gets up in the morning and he kisses his wife goodbye, kisses his kids goodbye, to be frank with you, buddy, it's about a 50-50 roll of the dice that the man's coming back home to his family that night in this nation. And it's not just New York City, man. It's everywhere. And again, one bad apple, one bad incident happens when somebody maybe gets overzealous or something. And most of the time, even in those incidents, there's a reason behind what happened. The media just, again, has demonized us to the place that we don't respect the people that are basically standing between us and total freaking anarchy and total lawlessness and chaos beyond words. Jim, what say you on that?
Well, when I started fighting against these social justice reforms in 2017, I was very naive. I just, thought that like people were making mistakes. I didn't understand what a bigger movement and bigger agenda this was a part of. And I really do feel, I've never believed in conspiracies. I don't believe in the boogeyman. But George Soros has a huge role to play in what we're witnessing now. And, he was able to infiltrate a lot of our cities, a lot of our politicians, and we're seeing his agenda at play in every major city in our country, unfortunately. And what we have to ask ourselves, what happens to our country when our cities collapse, as we're witnessing them collapse right now? New York City, Philadelphia, LA, Chicago, DC, Baltimore. So what happens to our society when our cities are no longer prospering or functioning properly? Will our society collapse? And that's what the socialist movement and George Soros wants. So they can rebuild as a socialist society, and they will be the ones in power. The media is complicit. They're in bed with them, whether they know it or not. And we really just need to pay attention and get out and vote. And anybody that's backed by George Soros or believes in social justice reform or defund the police or calls themselves a progressive or the DSA, you need to come out and really, really campaign against them actively and vote wholeheartedly against them.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better. Listen, I know we got to wrap this up a little bit. I want to thank you both for being with us today. I do want to ask you both the final sort of topic, and I hope y'all can come back. This has been good stuff. I've enjoyed this. We Southerners, we're the kind, I could sit on the porch with John Macari and just listen to him talk all day. I just fold my hands, drink my tea, and say, tell me what's going on, man. He's the kind of guy that I'd want to listen to a lot. But I do want to ask you about Governor Hochul and this Chinese situation, because that's another little story that has gotten sort of brushed under the rug. John, what do you know about the Chinese spy that they found in Hochul's office? And does Eric Adams, let me rephrase the question. Does the stink of Eric Adams' indictment go north to the Hochul office, or does it stop with him?
That's a great question. And I'll tell you why that's a great question, because if you look at what's going on in New York, we had a seated police commissioner removed. We had a seated schools chancellor removed. We had the top 5 of the 7 of Eric Adams and mayoral administration step down. And not much was said from Governor Kathy Hochul. Not much was said from the top law enforcement officer in New York State, Letitia James. They're very quiet. Yes. And to speak on the Chinese spy, there's also allegations of that inside of the mayor's office. There's also allegations of that inside of the New York City Police Department. There's allegations of that throughout every agency in New York City. So I will not be shocked when state officials are either made subjects of this investigation or subsequently indicted part of this allegation. Because like I said originally, I said that it was being sold that we'll take care of a lot of different things for you. Department of Buildings, Department of Health, the New York State Liquor Authority. The police department doesn't have access to those people. So they need to have politicians in the state, such as Kathy Hochul and Letitia James, that were hanging out with them, with known criminals in nefarious places. So yeah, I think that the scandal you see with Eric Adams like I said, it's going to be the biggest corruption scandal in American history when it relates to the top.
Jen?
Well, here we go again, back to former Governor Andrew Cuomo, the gift that keeps giving, and this Chinese spy came up in his administration. So,
Exactly.
yeah, she worked for Governor Cuomo before Kathy Hochul. So, you know, and the infiltration of the Chinese Communist Party into every facet of our government and lives in this country is a huge problem. You know, I don't know if you've heard, but we had Chinese police officers and police stations in New York City. How is that allowed to spy on their citizens who are on American soil? So, I mean, you know, I just, and then, you know, through the pandemic, this woman, this Chinese spy in Governor Cuomo's administration was directly involved with the pandemic response when we know that the virus came from China, and Governor Cuomo was defrauded. New York State taxpayers were defrauded out of $11.5 million when he bought ventilators, what he thought was ventilators, from a Chinese sex toy company called Please or Pleasure Me. So how does the governor of a state like New York, you know, Governor Cuomo is so smart and so on top of his game. How does somebody like that get defrauded by a Chinese sex toy company and all of a sudden has a Chinese spy working within his government? By the way, we've never recovered the $11.5 million. We also are paying millions of dollars to a Hong Kong law firm to recoup some of that money. So it's a huge issue. And did she have a role to play in that? Did she get a kickback?
Yeah. You know, there's an old saying that everything is bigger in New York. You New Yorkers, y'all, when y'all do these scandals, man, y'all do them right. I mean, this is a this is a big one. I mean, this is we Southerners ain't used to this kind of stuff down here. We just look at, I mean, that's pretty big stuff. Hey, one quick question. Letitia James, the appeals court seemed to indicate that they're not too keen on what she did with President Trump's civil thing. Y'all think it's going to get tossed out? John, I'll give it to you, and then Jen, and we'll let you both wrap us up after this.
Oh, absolutely. I think that was honestly, it was a Stalinistic attack what we're seeing in New York. Not only under Letitia James, but also Alvin Bragg. What's being done to that man is pure political persecution. So yeah, I absolutely think if there's any sanity left in our country, yes, absolutely, it gets tossed.
Jen?
I'm actually going to send you a video, Chris, and hopefully you could play it when this airs, that a New York City Democrat made.
Okay.
Video of the proceedings, and keep in mind these are New York judges, so these are not MAGA judges or, you know, Donald Trump judges. Exactly. And I'm pretty sure that they probably are a little upset with Letitia James that, you know, as New York judges, they had to come out in support of a position that favors Donald Trump. I'm sure that they can't be happy about that. So hopefully they will take, you know, do what's right, because the whole trial was a complete farce. From the charge that she brought him up on to the way that it was processed and played out. It had to be a bench trial. There was no jury. The judge, you know, was God, basically. So I'm going to send you the video because it's pretty damning the way that they lead into her.
Good deal. Well, listen, we appreciate you both coming on. John, I'm going to give you a chance to wrap us up. Final thought, and then Jen, I'll let you wrap us up, and we'll say goodbye. We hope y'all can come back. It's been a good discussion, and we appreciate you. And John, I wish you the best on your podcast. I understand it's one of the biggest podcasts growing in New York and the country, and I'm proud of you. And just don't forget us small people when you become famous. And you're welcome anytime here on the McFiles, buddy. I appreciate you. Final thoughts is what we talked about today, real quick.
Yeah, you know, I often say, and sometimes people take it the wrong way, but I always say, as go New York, so goes the world.
Absolutely.
And I truly believe that. It's not because I'm from there. I just believe New York affects the world's economy. And we've seen it with broken windows policing. We saw how that spread across the country and how there was a huge dip in crime following the tactics that New York did. Same as what you see, the legislation coming out of New York, bail reform, discovery reform, has the same exact effect across the country, because we've seen all of those policies take hold. Seattle, Chicago, LA, Miami, all of these Democratic strongholds, they all moved in lockstep with New York. And what did we see? We saw crime rise. So 100%, if we're seeing corruption in New York City, that same corruption is playing out across the country in Democratic stronghold states across the country. So we really need to restore balance. We need to get our messaging out there, which is the truth. This is what's going on. And we really need to wake up the voters, not only the youth voters, but the working class, the people that are out there, the mom and dads that are busy. The apathy in politics needs to be alleviated, not only in New York, but across this country, or we're going to give up the ship. So I appreciate you having me on. I'll come back anytime. And
absolutely, buddy.
Pleasure meeting you.
Been a pleasure. Jenna, wrap us up. Final thoughts, buddy.
I just have to agree with everything that John said. And I just urge all of your listeners and viewers to just keep listening to you. Follow John and his podcast. They're extremely informative, and share all of the information. You can't just take this with you and say, oh, I agree with that, and listen to, the people that you agree with because it makes you feel better. You have to share this information with everybody that you know. Share the links, share the Twitter pages, show people on your phone when you're talking to your neighbors, or you're out at happy hour, or you're in church, whip out your phone and show people, look, no, this is the truth. This is really what's happening, because a lot of people don't believe it. And make sure that when you go out to vote on November 5th, I think it is this year, that you bring everybody that you possibly can with you.
Absolutely. Good point. Well, I hope to get y'all both on at least one more time before the election. And I want to thank you both again. And John Macari, John, give us your website where you're at on your podcast, buddy.
Sure. It's www.thefinestunfiltered.com. You can follow me. I use my name. It's at John D. Macari, Macari. And that's Twitter and Instagram. We go live on everything: YouTube, Rumble, Apple, Spotify. So I appreciate it. Appreciate the plug. Appreciate you having me on.
Well, we got the Mac and Maca tag. Now, Harrison, I don't know where you fit into all that. Your name is just, But anyway, Jen, thank you so much. John, thank you. Folks, we'll be right back. We appreciate our guest tonight. We'll be right back with a final thought. And we want to thank Miss Jen Harrison for being with us. It's been a while since we've had her. We're going to get Jen on. We've been wanting to get her on, just her thoughts, but she was the one that set this up with John. I'm really grateful, man. I tell you, we got some good stuff tonight, and we hope that you enjoyed this. We're going to have this duo back. Jen has given us somewhat of a heads up. She may be with us election night. I hope she can be on the panel. We're going to have a panel of people on election night covering the returns here. We got full election coverage that night. You better get your popcorn, your coffee, your we're going to be up it's going to be a late night McFiles, and we're going to have a good time. We're going to have all sorts of folks coming in and out like we did last year, or 4 years ago, I should say. Hey, I found I found the video. I'm going to play it for you right here. I'm going to go, screen is going to go black just for a second, and I'm going to play this video that Jen was talking about the appeals court. I'll be back to talk to you about this in just a second. I tell you what, I'll just keep it right here on the screen. We'll just do this, make this simple on everybody. And here is an excerpt of that appellate court hearing that Jen was talking about. It's very intriguing. Roll the tape.
May it please the court, Judith Vale for the New York Attorney General's office. All of the defendants repeatedly violated...
Ms. Vale, can you identify any previous case in which the Attorney General sued under Executive Law 6312 to upset a private business transaction that was between equally sophisticated partners, where the supposed victim had the ability and legal obligation to discover the allegedly misrepresented matters by conducting its own due diligence, where the supposed wrongdoer advised the supposed victim through written disclaimers to conduct its own due diligence and to draw its own conclusions, where the alleged misrepresentation almost entirely concerned inherently subjective valuations of properties and businesses, and where the victim never complained about any fraud in the transactional losses from it. Because I've gone through the cases which you've cited, and all of them always involved a consumer protection aspect. It involved protection of the market.
Several responses.
And I want to add to his question, and little to no impact on the public market.
The honest business people who don't do the misconduct and therefore don't get the kind of benefit that they got here.
I suppose you're referring to the fact that Trump received a lower interest rate than he might otherwise have received. But haven't you yourself conceded that the assets were sufficient to get the lower interest rate of the private wealth management direction.
About the incredible
Doesn't Mr. Hay
collateral.
Doesn't Mr. Hay testify that there were 14 factors and this was the least important factor?
Well, using
Sorry, but what's being described sounds an awful lot like a potential commercial dispute between private actors.
The at issue was between a very big bank, Wells Fargo, and a professional appraisal firm.
But
And-
it wasn't wasn't the concern there that the public would ultimately be negatively impacted and affected by what those corporate actors were doing?
So you're pointing to Ernst & Young, you're pointing to First American. Ernst & Young, you're dealing with the collapse of Lehman Brothers. First American, you're dealing with an action brought against an appraiser who overvalued properties at the behest of a lender, perpetrating a scheme to induce unsophisticated consumers into taking out home loans that they could not afford. It hardly seems that justifies bringing an action to protect Deutsche Bank against President Trump, which is what you have here. I mean, you've got two really sophisticated parties in which no one lost any money, and that was the point of my initial question. Every case that you cite involved where there was damage to consumers, damage to the marketplace. You've got a scheme to get unsophisticated consumers to take out home loans. You got a collapse of Lehman Brothers. You don't have anything like that here.
And the statute is written broadly because the legislature wants the Attorney General to go in and stop fraud and illegality.
Counsel, an example of what you're talking about, I think, is People versus Allen, isn't it? There it was just a dispute among partners.
Yes,
it didn't affect the public, at all. But I think you hear underneath all these questions, the question of mission creep. As 6312 morphed into something that it was not meant to do. And that's something you must address, because there has to be some limitation on what the Attorney General can do in interfering in these private transactions, as Justice Friedman said, that where people don't claim harm. So what is the limiting principle?
Well, I'll say two things, Your Honor. Well, first of all, the limiting principle are what's in the law. So the illegality claims require intent. They require materiality.
Let's talk about the standalone.
Just for the 6312 fraud. Well, this court has defined that rather broadly, but there are still limits. It is not falsity in the wind, first of all. It is not falsity that you whisper to someone on the couch. It has to be related and relevant to the business at hand.
I notice you say the ordinary standard on page 55 of your brief. You say these deceptive strategies had a capacity or tendency to deceive because they would have been relevant to and likely to mislead an ordinary person involved in the business dealings, and you cite to General Electric. Isn't the test here whether they were likely to mislead Deutsche Bank or Ladder Capital or the City of New York awarding a golf license, or Zurich on a surety bond program, or Everest National Insurance Company on a directors and officers policies? The defendant's statements were not meant for ordinary people. They were directed at some of the most sophisticated individuals and entities in business.
I have a question that's similar to Judge Rosado's, actually, which is the immense penalty in this case is troubling. So how do you tether the amount that was assessed by Supreme Court to the harm that was caused here, where the parties left these transactions happy about how things went down?
All I can say is, wow, that is the New York Appellate Court and their discussions. Those judges, folks, they were tearing Letitia James's case to pieces. I mean, I'm not a legal expert totally, but I know enough about, I've been in these things, covering them through the years, and I will tell you this, those judges basically, look at her face back there, that smirk. I've just got a gut, and I think that Jennifer was sort of alluding to it, that they're going to throw this judgment out, and I'm going to tell you what it's going to do. It's going to open the door, and I think this Eric Adams indictment, if I was Letitia James tonight, I would be very concerned about what happened in the mayor's office in New York, because I think that it's going to reach her desk. There are rumors that she was aware to some degree of what Eric Adams was doing and did not do anything about it. I'm not saying there's confirmation of that. But when I was listening to these questions, these are questions that a legitimate, fair broker appellate court should be asking. And there was two things that struck me. One guy said, at what limit can the Attorney General do these things? That's number one. Number two, the guy on the far left in the picture, He said the amount of money that they charge Trump with and basically give him a punitive damage for is very troubling. Very troubling. Folks, this case had no merit. It was a political hit job. And even Hochul come out and said, I want to just tell all the businesses that all of you don't have to worry about us doing this to you. We're just doing this to Trump. And that's what I would be playing to the appellate court if I was his attorney there. And because she basically as good as said that it was a political hit job. So I don't know how this is going to go, because you never know about New York. They could be just saying that for the camera and then basically rule 5-0 that they're going to uphold the judgment. But based upon that body language and those questions, bye-bye, Letitia James. See ya. Wouldn't want to be you. That's all I got to say. Watch this thing in New York with Eric Adams. It's about corruption in government. It's not about Diddy and all this other crap and all this other nonsense out there. This is about a mafia-run mayorship. And it's going to be exposed. And I got a gut feeling the lady in the back there that has caused great harm to President Trump up to this point. I mean, she treated him, even in the appeals process, some of the things she did after the case, they've got a gag order on him right now. And Bragg's the same way. I think this sets the dominoes in effect. If this case goes down, you can kiss Bragg's case goodbye. But look, the one in Georgia's toast. And the only thing left is the documents case. They've thrown that out in Florida. And Jack Smith's BS case about J6. That's the last standing thing, and they're trying their best. They've got 30 days to try to get Trump in a courtroom, and they're just not going to do it. So the lawfare as of tonight has failed. It doesn't mean they're going to stop. But it's good news, and I thank Jennifer for sending me that video, because it's pretty powerful stuff. That's pretty powerful stuff. And, but anyway. Alrighty. If you've got a few comments, I'll read Jennifer Milano's comment. She's from New York. She says that New York needs another Rudy. Yep, it does. It does, but there's no Rudy in sight, Jen. Hate to tell you. I think John said it right. The Republican Party is non-existent in New York. These Republicans that are there are spineless. Lee Zeldin is probably the best of them, but I like Lee. But Lee is you gotta have a look. You New Yorkers are tough cookies, okay? I can't believe that the Republicans cannot find a Rudy Giuliani among this new group of politicians that can stand up and stand the fire and do what they need to do to clean this mess up there. I can't understand that. Look, I don't know why Lee Zeldin got beat, because he was a good man. He would have been a great governor for New York. And I know there's a lot of corruption, and I know there's a lot of things to be left desired in the process. But I'm hoping that this thing with Adams is a domino that's going to basically begin a process. But this is the horrific truth of the matter, and John and Jen both said it. It's a possibility, if not a probability, that Andrew Cuomo is going to be the new mayor of New York City. The one that basically sentenced hundreds of or thousands of basically nursing home patients to their death in 2020. And all this sexual stuff was just a smokescreen to get the attention off of what he did during COVID, because a lot of other mayors and a lot of other governors was using his blueprint to shut states down and shut cities down and shut counties down by what he was doing in New York. So it's just a mess. I'm hoping I'm going to take that down. Because I can't stand to see her face. But I'm hoping that appellate court, those questions that they're asking, is going to lead to an overturn. Because I believe this case, should this go down, Bragg's case is probably going right out the door with it. Because it's basically based on the same principle of what he tried to do to Trump. He turned his case into criminal activity. And so we'll see. We'll see what happens. I was shocked because it's a New York appellate court, and I think Jen said it best. Can you imagine what they had to go do in between sessions to go barf in the bathroom, that they were sitting there trying to say President Trump was wrong? These people hate Trump. They can't stand him. But they had to, under the law, recognize this is a travesty. So it don't bode well It don't bode well for Letitia James. It is. Anyway, folks, on topic questions, please. On topic questions. On topic comments, please. Emmeline, it was a great interview. We had a good time with guests. Very, very good. Very good, good. Zella, it is Jello on a wall. It is absolutely Jello on a wall. And I think it's about to come off. Corey says, Tish went beyond the scope of authority, major overreach. They've all done that. Dennis says, evil has no limits. It's so entrenched in New York, but it has pretty much spread nationwide, just on a smaller scale. It's always about power and money. Dennis, that is well said. And that's why we brought this to y'all tonight, because, folks, look, I have hope. And this is not a Get Eric Adams show tonight. Look, I don't know Eric Adams. I don't live in New York City. But my gut at the beginning, just my personal feeling was, I was wondering why the left was basically sacrificing him. Because I look at him like I do Robert Menendez in New Jersey. I mean, Menendez is a Democrat now. I mean, he's been in the Democrat Party for 40 years, 50 years. I mean, he's been a demagogue. And Eric Adams, he came on the scene and he was the replacement. He's supposed to be the great savior and bring, stability to New York. And he's done nothing but open up the illegals. He's opened up sanctuary cities in there, or he's opened up a sanctuary city basically in New York City. And he's done all this, but I didn't know all this stuff was going on behind the scenes. And I was asking John off the show and on the show, was it the left? And he said, no, this ain't the left doing this. He said, this is actual corruption. Because a lot of these things sometimes are political hit jobs, even on their side. I mean, the left eats their own. Sometimes they do. That's what I'm sort of saying. They normally don't eat their own. And I was just wondering why they're eating their own. But this is not an eating their own thing. So I'm hopeful. I mean, it actually gives me hope that maybe there's some justice coming somewhere in these cities. Because Eric Adams ain't the only one running a mafia-type city. There's others. There's governors. Thinking of one in Michigan tonight, running her state the same way. The Waltz was running Minnesota the same way. You Minnesotians are probably jumping up for joy. He's running for vice president because it's taking him off of being your governor and destroying your state. You should be thanking Kamala for getting him out of Minneapolis and keeping him from destroying your state any more than he has. But we'll see. But Dennis, your point is well taken, and it is a good point. Because it's not just New York. It's not just New York. It's not just New York. But we'll see what happens. I'm hopeful that this is the beginning of an end for this stuff. I really do. Anyway, let's see what else we got here. If you got a comment on topic. Wesley, is this the case where they got the felony? No, that is, Wesley, that case is Bragg's case. Bragg basically took a misdemeanor and they twisted the statute, and they allowed him to charge Trump with a third-degree felony over something that was, even the most liberal of legal experts says was not a felony. Letitia James's case was civil. James's case was civil. She claimed he defrauded the bank by devaluing or overvaluing his assets and to get these loans. But those judges were smart enough to see through this because nobody got hurt. Trump paid the loans back, and they were basically punishing him basically for doing what every business in New York does. If you do business with a bank, you're going to give the bank as high a value of property value as you can within the legal ramifications of the law. You can't overdo it. It's bank fraud, but Trump didn't commit fraud, and that's what she convinced a jury that he did. There was nobody hurt in this. The banks didn't lose money. The city of New York didn't lose money. The state didn't lose money. Trump didn't lose money. Everybody paid their loans back, and they still got this egregious, criminal, demonic, hideous, damnable, punitive damage from this jury that had to be smoking crack. And the crack they were smoking was Trump hatred. That's all they cared about. It's what all the Bragg jury cared about. To get one for the Gipper, and to get one for George Soros, and get one for people that hate Trump. But I'm hoping, because based upon that language, this is not coming from a conservative court. The New York Appeals Court is one of the most liberal in the country. But if they're even saying, hey, what in the crap are y'all doing? Then so be it. But no way to say that was Bragg's case. The left does demand groupthink and group speak. If you turn, they will rend you. I know that. Well, Zealot, that may be true, but I don't think this is the case in Eric Adams, and I think John basically said that. He said that a lot of people thought that because Eric Adams may have spoke out against Biden, I never heard him speak out against Biden, that the left turned on him. This has nothing to do with any of that. This has nothing to do with any of that. Eric Adams was just running a mafia-type operation out of his mayor's office. And he's facing bribery and extortion and conspiracy charges tonight. And he can go out there and say he's not guilty. He'll get to prove that in front of a jury of his peers at some point. But I don't think that's the last apple to fall. And that's why I asked John the question at the end, how far up this goes. There's a possibility that this goes to the governor's office and other officials, including Letitia James, because Letitia James was right there hand in hand with Eric Adams. And she's the Attorney General of the state of New York. And she would have known a lot of these business dealings. I'm sure she was aware of it. So, may not be a good October for Letitia. You know, Hillary was out there predicting an October surprise. Well, you know, she may have declared it on herself and her Democrat cronies up there in New York. Wouldn't that be a sweet peach? Wouldn't that be a sweet peach? Mark, your point is right. This wouldn't never happen in a state that follows the law. Mark, there ain't too many of them that do. There ain't too many of them that do. There ain't too many of them that do. There's some, but there ain't too many. We're in a lawless society, my friend. This is what happens when a nation goes lawless, and we've gone lawless. We've absolutely gone lawless. And we don't traffic in rumors, Ella. Sorry about that. But we don't traffic in rumors. Somebody else was in here claiming that. And we don't have any idea about that. And I ain't going to allow it in my chat. I don't care who he's involved with. What I do care about is that they rid this corruption and get this corruption out of government. Because let me tell you who this hurts. I don't give two-bit pins about all these rumors and all this crap that's out there on that freaking internet out there where people are smoking Puff Daddy cigarettes and getting their brains full of mush. What I do care is what the corruption does to hurt the people of New York City. What the corruption's doing to hurt the people of North Carolina tonight that can't get the FEMA people. You got Pete Buttigieg, and I'd say a lot other word for him, telling them don't fly drones over their houses to find their lost loved ones. The government would come help you find them. The government couldn't take a cheeseburger out of a drive-thru. And it's an insult. And we got a story we're going to talk about tomorrow night. They're out of money with FEMA. You know why they're out of money? They can't help the New York victims tonight other than $750, which again, I saw some of you comment, and it's right. 2 trips to the grocery store maybe, if they're lucky. Do you know that the reason that FEMA is without money is because they've been giving it to illegal aliens. And they have been setting up these camps and setting up these illegal cities and sanctuary cities and funneling millions of dollars of taxpayer money into that. So they're out of money tonight. And now we got a hurricane that has destroyed lives. I got a neighbor, and I saw a lot of cars in their driveway, and I was concerned maybe something had happened. And I saw them today, and I said, y'all okay? And they said, yeah, our family from New York had come. They got no water. They had to come stay here in Tennessee because they got no water, and nobody is helping them. It's an insult. This corruption has nothing to do with some pimp daddy. I don't care who he is. Has nothing to do with that crap. I could care less about that. But what I do care about the corruption is what it does to the people of New York, and the corruption in government, what it's doing to people that are actually hurting tonight. And if you hear a little terseness in my voice, it's for good reason. It's for good reason. And again, I don't mean this to be ugly tonight, folks. We got people concerned that Trump's praying to an angel, or Trump his wife made comments that the pro-life people have their feathers in the water about tonight. We're not electing Melania to the presidency. My God, the people, I never get an email from anybody or a text or anything that shows me Kamala Harris's evil agenda about abortion. It's always Trump. Trump's a liar. Trump's this, Trump's that. We can't vote for Trump. We can't support Trump because of this. Folks, have you looked around and saw what this government has done to your country for 4 freaking years? Do you want to keep this pattern going? Do you want to make it worse? We chase these rabbits down to our detriment and to our destruction. Instead of keeping our eye focused on getting this corruption out of government and cleaning freaking house. So yeah, I'm a little terse tonight. I'm a little terse. And Chris will amen himself. I'll amen him himself. I'll amen myself. All right, any other questions, any other statements tonight before we go? We may be back, may not. We may be back, we may be not. Any other questions? Good to see Kelly Manili in the house tonight. Cindy Mack, good to see you. Susan Prusky, Mark McIntosh. Cleo was in the house tonight. Good to see you, dear friend. Seventh son. 2 birds with 1 stone. Well, 7th, who knows? We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to play this out. But I think this was an important interview tonight. We're not going to be back tonight. It's already 10:30. I'm going to let you go tonight. I'm going to get my cannons full for tomorrow night. But folks, I want to say this as I go out of here. I mean this with all my heart. And look, you know me. I'm a Southern. You've been around me 7 years. You know how I get. And you know that there's this time Chris just lets it all hang out. And I'm about to let it all hang out right here. Please knock this stupidity off and worrying about Trump and his religious bent. We're not hiring a pastor in November in 30 days. You need a priest or you need a pastor. Go find you a local spiritual leader and pray for that spiritual leader. Stop looking to Trump to be that spiritual leader for you. He's your president. Let me tell you why people act like they do. The prophetic community basically put all these labels on him in 2020 and 2016, and they elevated him up to this spiritual giant and spiritual leader of the country, and they made us believe that Trump was a perfect spiritual Cyrus that was going to rescue the country, bring messiahship to the White House, and solve all our problems, put all the bad guys in jail. He was going to set America free of all the evil, and he did none of that, did he? He didn't do it in 2016. He sure didn't do it in 2020. No, Trump is a man that is running for president. You need a priest, go find you a priest. You need a pastor, go find you a pastor. You need a spiritual leader, go find you a spiritual leader. You're not voting for any of the above in November. And don't think am not concerned about his stance on these things and abortion. I'm very concerned. But I look at the other candidate, folks. Look at where we have been stuck in. I went to the grocery store today for one person. Leslie Millway was on our show last night. Her husband and her went to the grocery store. $406. One trip. One trip. Is there something more to argue about? Is there not something, are we not more concerned about the state of our country than Trump's spiritual condition? We're not hiring a spiritual leader. We're hiring somebody to lead the country politically. And you say, well, why is it we should not worry about him, his spiritual condition? Because again, folks, if you're going to make that be a litmus test, then let's talk about Kamala's spiritual condition. You got a lady here that's calling for abortion after 9 months. You got Tim Walz that has basically not even abashedly, unashamedly says, yeah, I'll agree abortion all the way up past the baby being born. But all I hear is Trump this, Trump that, Trump this. Oh, the massacre coming on. Woohoo! It's time we grow up. It's time we grow up. And realize if we need a priest, pastor, or a spiritual guru, go find one. We need to keep our focus. Let me tell you this, what the hypocrisy is of that tonight. 50% of Christians are not even registered to vote. These same Christians that are out there running their mouth and trashing Trump and trashing his character, trashing his past, trashing his family, trashing everything he does and everything he says and chasing every rabbit down they can find, they won't even go out and vote. They won't even get registered to vote. But yet they're an expert on how Trump's the boogeyman. There's some expert on this and expert on that. And then they won't even lift a freaking finger to vote. Yeah, Chris is a little wired up and a little fired up and a little mad tonight because I'm going to tell you that's why this country is in the pathetic mess it's in. And if you have enjoyed 4 years of what you just went through, then you sit your blessed assurance at home and you don't vote. You want to complain about Trump's spirituality? Look in the mirror at your own spirituality first. Take inventory of your own life. Maybe your spirituality may not come up so high on the chart either. We all need to take a look in that freaking mirror before we start pointing our finger at others and pointing our finger at his life and his past and all this other stuff. You don't like Melania's view on abortion? Pray for her. You don't like her view on abortion? Pray for her. You don't like Trump, whatever he did, and getting all your feathers in the water over some tweet and post? For God's sake, folks, your nation is in hell. And it's time we grow up. And I mean that very lovingly tonight on a Thursday night. I say it with everything in me. On this platform of mine that God has granted me the voice, and I'm going to take my moment in my moment of time and say what I got to say tonight. If you need a priest, go get a priest. You need a pastor, go get a pastor or a spiritual leader. Trump is not any of those. He is a political candidate, and J.D. Vance, if he showed you anything last night, if something happens to Trump, we've got a young man behind him that is more than capable to run this country. If something happens to her, look at who you got coming from Minnesota to run the country. Have you thought about that? No. We're too worried about Trump's tweets. We're too worried that he's praying to an angel. He's not praying to an angel. He reposted something from a conservative person that was posting something. Trump was just repeating. I don't care who Trump prays to. Can I ask you a question? Who do you think Kamala Harris prays to, folks? She don't even pray. You think Tim Walz prays? No. I'm going to leave that one alone tonight. I'll leave that one alone. It's time we look in the mirror, Kelly. It's time we look in the mirror. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Woo! Anyway. And yep, Chris is very right. Chris is very right. Chris is very right. And I will see you tomorrow. For those of you that want to come back. But folks, we need to take a look in the mirror. You want to judge Trump? Look in the mirror. You want to judge what he's doing and what he's saying, and you need a spiritual, you get daddy issues, you need attention, and you just so worried about what he's doing. Get a shrink. Get a dog. Get something. But get your butt down there to the voting booth and register to vote. Your country is at stake. And my country is at stake. My kids are at stake tonight. My grandkids are at stake. Do you want to continue down this path? I don't think there's a soul in this chat room that does. Then we need to shake ourselves free of this nonsense that we're chasing down tonight and getting all bent out of shape about. And again, if you don't like something he says or does or her or whoever else, pray for them. But please grow up and realize what's at stake in this election. It's lawlessness. It is lawlessness, folks, and destruction. And that's the simple choice we've got. That's the simple choice we got. And I hope you've had a good show tonight. I hope you've enjoyed the show with Mr. John and Miss Jennifer. And the ranting and ravings of the man called Christopher Wayne McDonald. These opinions are mine. While I'm at it, before I go, one more thing tonight, because I need to get this off my chest. So I like to get this off my chest every night. You see this country right here? Our future is tied to this one. Our future is tied to this one. So all you anti-Semites, listen up good. You think this one's going to survive without this one? You're a fool. No, this one's going to be around at the end when all the smoke clears. The Bible's pretty clear about that. There ain't no guarantee this one is. And by the way, Israel's on the ballot in November. Abortion's on the ballot in November. Your family's economies and your future is on the ballot in November. Life is on the ballot in November. You don't want to vote for the man, then vote for the policy and hush up. And I approve this message tonight. I think I'm going to run for president. My goodness. Have a good night, everybody. Be blessed out there. I love you. You know I'm saying this because I love you. You know I'm just saying this because I love you. Let's make this happen. Get out there and vote. Get registered. Be blessed out there. I'll see you tomorrow morning and then tomorrow night back here. Good night.